Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial on the ASP.NET Core middleware pipeline. In this video, we will be discussing what middleware is and how it works in the ASP.NET Core request pipeline. We will also be looking at some examples of built-in middleware and how you can use them in your own applications. Before we dive into the details of middleware, it's important to understand the overall architecture of an ASP.NET Core application. In ASP.NET Core, the request pipeline is made up of a series of middleware components that handle requests and responses. These components are assembled into an application pipeline to handle requests and responses. Each component in the pipeline has the ability to make decisions based on the request, update the response, or short circuit the request, meaning that the pipeline will not be continuing further to more middleware entities. The request will be short circuited and the response will be provided from any of the middleware entity from within the pipeline. And we will see an example how this can be done. In addition to these capabilities, middleware is modular, meaning that you can add or remove it as needed. This allows you to customize the request pipeline to fit the needs of your application. So, how do you add middleware to this pipeline? It's actually quite simple. In the startup class of your ASP.NET Core application, you will find a configure method that takes an iApplicationBuilder instance as a parameter. This app instance has a series of use methods that you can use to add middlewares to the pipeline. Like over here in this default project, you can see that a number of middleware instances are being added to the pipeline. Here is an example how to add your own middleware component to the pipeline. You just have to write app.use and then you have to provide the middleware like this. This middleware is going to be a method type with the arguments for the context and the next middleware. So we have to use the array function to create this function. Now over here you can perform any work that you want to perform, but this work, if you are not short circuiting, it should not write anything to the response. So perform work that doesn't write anything to the response. When you are done doing the work that needs to be done in this middleware, then you can simply call the next function. So you can call next.invoke, and that's everything you need to do to set up a middleware in your request pipeline. Over here, the context is an HTTP context instance that provides access to HTTP specific features for the current request and response. The next parameter is a delegate that represents the next component in the request pipeline. To pass the request to the next component in the pipeline, you can call the invoke method on this next delegate. This allows you to perform work before and after the component is invoked. So maybe after the next component is invoked, you may want to do some kind of cleanup. Then you can do that after this next delegate has been invoked. Now let's see another example how we can short circuit the request pipeline, and for that I'm going to copy this same middleware implementation, but we are going to add a condition over here, and that is going to be we will first check for a specific segment within the URL, and that can be done by simply typing context.request.path. If it starts with a specific segment such as this one, then we may want to short circuit this pipeline, and that can be done by simply writing something to the response. So context.response.write async. So write async is not available, but we can add its namespace. So what we can do is we can add the .NET Core HTTP namespace, and then we have to provide the response. So I'm just going to provide a string which simply says short circuited. If this is not the case, then we can simply call the next delegate or invoke the next delegate. So next.invoke. And we also have to write await next to it because this is an async function. Now let's run the project to see how this middleware is going to short circuit the request. This is how the application is running in the browser, but we have to test this code to find out when the request will start with this segment, then if the middleware short circuits the request or not. So let's copy this segment. Now I am just going to paste it over here, press enter. You can see that short circuited has been printed over here as a response. This is just a very basic example. You can use short circuiting for so many different things, like maybe you want to validate the request. If it's incorrect, then display a helpful web page to the user, or you may want to redirect the user to another website or web page. It's up to you how you want to use your middleware. Now let's take a look at some examples of built-in middleware. One example is this use static files, which serves static files such as images, CSS, and JavaScript from the specified folder. Another example is this use authorization middleware, which authorizes the request. In conclusion, we have learned about the ASP.NET Core middleware pipeline and how you can use it to handle requests and responses in your application. We have also looked at some examples of built-in middleware which are being used currently in this default project. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.